Hello. This is my first Facebook Live, and so I am a total noob at this. So please forgive me for this very, very foreign thing that I'm doing. This is the first time I'm doing it. But I really wanted to do a Facebook Live because I was tired of writing blogs. So I figured this is a better way to get to know me. I really wanted to share who I was on today's Facebook Live, but I also really wanted to plant the seed. And I wanted to plant the seed on raising the level of consciousness on what our narrative or sometimes our negative self-talk is actually saying to us. So I think we all have, or we're all familiar with negative self-talk, but sometimes we don't even really recognize what it's saying, or that what it's saying is actually negative. And so I have a coaching business called Own Your Story, and my whole philosophy or core message of that business is really built on the idea of making women and people feel like they're enough. Because when we don't feel like we're enough, often this is when the negative self-talk occurs. So when I describe negative self-talk for myself, it's often the times when I'm about to do something epic or exciting, and there's this little voice that creeps into my head and says, don't do it, you're gonna fail. And I'm not gonna lie, even doing my first Facebook Live, there was that little voice in my head asking myself, are you sure? Are you sure you wanna do this to yourself? But I'm doing it because I really, really believe in this message, and I believe in walking the talk, and I also believe that it's a constant practice. So it doesn't happen overnight. And this is me pushing myself, even as we speak. So here's the negative self-talk. And I've always seen myself as a high achiever. I like to know that I'm doing the best. I want to be the best. And that idea makes me feel like I need to be everything to everyone. And I don't know if anybody here relates to that idea that you have to be everything to everyone. And it would have been so much easier back then if I realized that this very high expectation of myself came from the narrative of I didn't think I was enough, which is why I overcompensate. And I think oftentimes we overcompensate and we create a coping mechanism, and we don't even realize that it is a coping mechanism. So here are my top 3 coping mechanisms that I've experienced in my life. It is still a work in progress, but I've definitely made leaps and bounds on this type of improvement. So the first one is perfectionism. And I think everyone is familiar with that word. But for me personally, I perfect to avoid criticism. So I will do everything a million times before I think it's perfect, and then I will share it. And this happened to me even when I was doing a presentation. So I watched my boss give the same presentation for a full year before I felt confident and capable enough to do it myself. And I talk about blog posts. I was sick of writing a blog post because in the past it took me about like 10 hours to write one because I would keep on going back and tweaking it, and it was exhausting. And I'd have to give a quick shout out to my peer coach, Sandra, because she's really helped me push me through that, where she challenged me to write a whole draft in an hour, and that is unheard of. So it did take about 2 instead of 1, but I mean that's a lot better than 8, right? So that was how kind of perfectionism kind of kicked in my life. I just always waited. I was really scared of failure. I was really scared of being judged, and I didn't want to share it, of course, until it was just right. And this kind of worked in my favor in a sense that a lot of times when I did perfect it, I got, for the most part, a good response. It kind of like boosted my ego. And as a result of that, I kept on perfecting. I was stuck in this cycle because I kind of felt like I was rewarded by trying so hard to make it just right. But at the end of the day, it was so debilitating because I actually stopped blogging because of it for a while. I do now. I'm back at it. But for a long time, I just stopped because I was so drained. The idea of doing it just made, I just couldn't. I couldn't imagine spending 10 hours on something. So this is why sometimes the whole perfectionism thing sometimes kind of backfires. The second symptom that I had was control. And hi, Jeannie. The second one I had was control. So I love certainty. I live for certainty. I want the guarantee. I want to know that whatever I'm doing is going to yield the result that I expect. And I always think that I know best. So that's really the narrative, is I know best, so I'm going to do it my way. The only challenge with that is that when it doesn't turn out the way that I want, I feel helpless. I feel hopeless. I feel stressed. And I get mad at myself. I also get mad at other people. So a lot of control also comes with micromanaging. And we like to plan for the worst. So we have a plan B for our plan B. And so you can imagine how much time we spend planning for what's going to happen, and we don't end up enjoying the moment. We're so caught up in the outcome that we don't spend the time enjoying that moment when we're actually doing something. And let's be honest here, how effective is micromanaging when you're trying to micromanage your family, your husband, your coworkers, your friends, your peers? It doesn't work. I don't think they appreciate it. So that's kind of the issue with control, is even though we kind of get a little bit of a guarantee, we often end up pissing a few people off in the process, including ourselves. The last one is people pleasing, and I'm very guilty of that. So the idea of being the best wasn't just, I want to be the best at everything. I wanted to be the best in a sense of, I wanted to be well liked by everyone. I wanted everyone to like me. And as a result, I felt like I had to be everything to everyone. I also didn't like confrontation. So there's a huge narrative in my head that always said, you know what, Mandy, like, don't rock the boat. Just don't say anything. Because I wanted people to think that I was kind, that I was understanding, that I was accommodating. And those are all great qualities that I truly desire to be, but not at the cost of my own happiness, not at the cost of my own needs. Because what happens with people who people please, they give and they give and they give, and then they end up running on empty. And then they build resentment, or they feel like the victim. And at that point, they can't give at all. So as much as being nice and understanding and accommodating are all great things, a caregiver is a great thing, we have to make sure that we keep on filling ourselves first. So I've talked about the top three. So perfectionism, control, people pleasing. So then the idea is there a cure for all of this? Like, are we just all doomed to be like this? And the answer is yes, there is a cure. I'm going to tell you what it is, and it's going to seem a little bit simple. There's probably a lot of more like deeper work to be done. But the first step really is to be conscious of this talk, to be able to name the talk, to be able to say, hey, this is me being a perfectionist. Why am I being a perfectionist? Is it based on fear? Or is it based on the idea that I think that I'm striving for my best? And there's a big difference between striving to be your best and being a perfectionist. So understanding that clear difference and becoming aware of that narrative. So what are you saying to yourself? Because the higher your level of consciousness on your negative self-talk, the less power you give it, and the more power you have for yourself to actually choose a narrative that's going to serve you better. We all have to understand that oftentimes these three symptoms are masking a fear of some type of, your fear of vulnerability. You know, you don't want to, it's really scary to share who you are. And sometimes we almost have to combat that narrative of not enough with these symptoms, because the narrative might be, what if we show up as who we are and then we end up disappointing ourselves, or we end up disappointing others? And that's a very scary thought. So we end up masking ourselves, and sometimes we often become somebody that we're really not, so that it doesn't hurt as bad. The second thing, after you recognize that you actually have this negative self-talk and what it's actually saying to you, is change the way that you speak to yourself. And there's this quote that I love, love, love. I think it's anonymous, but it's your mind will always believe everything you tell it. So feed it hope, feed it truth, and feed it with love. And I'm super incredibly passionate when I say that I truly believe that everybody is meant to have an extraordinary life, one that gives them so much excitement, one that lights them up from the inside out. And I'm not lying. I'm not saying this to be nice. I really believe everybody has unlimited potential, that everyone has so much more to offer than what they're probably offering to the world right now. And I believe that when we finally have this narrative that we are enough and we practice self-love on a regular basis, then miracles can happen. So to really wrap it up, one thing that I've learned from coaching is to challenge everything. And if you resonate with this, and if you want to learn more, or if you want to dig deeper, of course, please always reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. If there are any other negative self-talks that I haven't mentioned, and I know there's a ton, please feel free to comment below and I'll definitely respond. If you like this video, please send me a like or a heart. I think you can do hearts here. I have no idea. Anything to show some love and support, and if you want, share it as well. Thank you so much, and again, this is Mandy Wong at Own Your Story. Bye.